Hi beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dee. Welcome if you're new. In today's video, I'd like to share some of my recent reflections and epiphanies with those of you who might care. We all know the past year and a half have been an entire shit show worldwide. Recently, it hasn't gotten any better either. You're seeing all the conflicts, divisiveness, and violence, whether it be physical violence or verbal violence, political violence, and whatnot. It just, I mean, it had changed my worldview entirely. So I'm not perceiving this world right now the same way I did maybe 2 years ago. I don't think it's necessarily an entire bad thing, but it did require me to re-evaluate the existence around me, people around me, and who people are, why we behave the way we do, why we think the way we do, why we treat each other the way we do. It's ridiculous, but either way, with that being said, I've been reading a lot of books on human psychologies, just try to understand why humans have to be like this. But either way, I've been reading this book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a really fantastic book. I haven't read too much because I'm also writing my thesis for my master's. I'll graduate in a month, and also that's a part of the reason why I have to film this video, to kind of blow off some steam, because I really have to shift my mind onto something less intense or something different. Either way, back to the book. At the beginning of the book, the author touched on the two fundamental systems that our human brains essentially function upon. It's called, there is the system 1, which is more intuitive and faster, but also it's more emotional. And there's the system 2 that works kind of slower and also lazier, but at the same time it's more logical because it looks for details and then rethinking of a lot of things. So you get the system 1, that's essentially like the first reaction to a lot of things, and then the system 2, that's more so like the reasoning part of how our brain works. The problem is, if these two systems can work in tandem with each other, but at the same time they can work against each other, especially when system 1 is this more dominant system that most people tend to resemble more of, because it just kicks in instantly and it's really fast. It's something that all people experience. It's almost like that first thought that just came into your mind whenever you're presented with something. That's why some people might just rely on their system 1 more, not necessarily with a bad connotation, but more so like these people tend to rely on their first intuitions more. And then there's the people that kind of rely on their system 2 more, which are the people that seem to rely on facts and logics more. Right here, I certainly wasn't trying to argue which system was superior than the other system, and certainly not the people that resemble each one. All I was trying to say is that is how we are as humans, and there is a reason why we're the way we are, because ever since hunter-gathering time until maybe the recent century, humans had to rely heavily on their system 1 to make that quick first reaction to find the food and shelter, to survive and reproduce, to pass down the genes. However, such system is not as mandatory in our today's modern society as a part of the survival skill sets, and we're experiencing this currently experiencing this shift in the requirement of the two systems. So to illustrate how these two systems work in your brain, we can look at this pretty interesting math problem together. If you have studied educational psychology, you've probably heard of it before. It's called a bat and ball problem. Essentially, the math problem goes, if a bat and a ball together cost $1.10, and then the bat is $1 more expensive than the ball, then how much does the ball cost? If I only give you maybe 5 to 10 seconds to think about the answer, maybe the number 10 cents will immediately pop into your mind. And that is how your system 1 work, because it's very intuitive to use $1.10 to deduct the $1, the number $1, and then get the number 10 cents. But if you really think about this, re-examine the logistics between these two objects. If together they worth $1.10 and one is $1 more expensive than the other, then the math doesn't add up if you simply use one to deduct the other. If you actually think about it and then recalculate the number, you might actually get the correct answer, which is 5 cents. But I'm pretty sure if you really think about it, you can all solve this problem. But you can see when your system 2 kicks in, it requires you to kind of overcome more mental frictions. You have to really think about it and then concentrate. The researchers have observed that when you actively get your system 2 involved, your pupil will dilate and also you might get a little bit sweaty, something like that. But with your system 1, it doesn't work like that. It's more relaxed and then it works very automatically. So you didn't consciously try to use $1.10 to deduct $1. It came to you naturally. So with that problem in mind, I think it can be applied to so many aspects in our life, especially when I used to struggle with bulimia, with binge eating disorder. I felt like I was always giving in to my system 1, which is the more intuitive mind. I would binge whenever my urges came up, and I never thought about the logistics between my urges and my actual appetite, my actual need for food. And that confused me. That's why over time, when the habit was formed, it was significantly more difficult for me to overcome that habit of binging on food whenever the urges come up, whether it be a reasonable urge or unreasonable urge. And I'm starting to look at other things, trying to apply this theory onto other aspects. For example, what we see on our social media every single day, a part of the reason, again, I quit social media was because I feel like social media is extremely intuitive. It preys on your system 1, and it aims at stirring up your emotions and also try to stir up your emotional side of mind, your emotional side of brain. And then most people when they're scrolling, they don't have to get their system 2 involved. That's why you see a lot of things that wouldn't make sense, and usually if you really actually take the time to reflect on certain phenomena that we're seeing in this society, you might think, wow, people are kind of just why? And this, now that we know how system 1 and system 2 work, I think it would make more sense to us. It's not that people are stupid, it's more so that they never actually got the chance to put in their system, to get their system 2 working. And also, even being highly educated doesn't kind of free you from falling into the trap of system 1, because you can be highly intelligent and highly system 2 oriented in your own line of work, but when it comes to something else, you might suddenly get your guard off and then become more system 1 heavy. So either way, my point is, in today's day and age, you never know. You never know which well you might fall into. And social media doesn't help one bit. I mean, social media is not just a double-edged sword. It's also something that you have to be prepared for, because if you aren't fully cognizant of what you're getting yourself into, you might actually get lost into this sea of system 1 oriented tasks and then get yourself overwhelmed. And again, there's a learning curve to understanding even how yourself work, your brain works. But either way, another thing that comes up when I was reading the book, which is the herd mentality, that works also in tandem with system 1, because when we are seeing all of our peers, all of the influential people around us on social media, which is the most accessible social world that we can find at this point, especially during the lockdown. We feel this pressure to conform, and there's a really famous experiment called Ash conformity experiment, where psychologist Dr. Ash did this experiment on a bunch of male college students. He picked a bunch of male college students to sit in one room and then look at two cards. One card has a reference line on it, and then on the other card there are 3 lines, and only out of those 3 lines, only one line has the same length as the reference line. In these college students, only a few are real innocent, clueless participants. All of the other ones, the majority of them are actually actors. So in some classrooms, in some rooms, the psychologist asked these actors to pick the correct answer, because it's a pretty obvious answer, you know, once you see it immediately. But in some of the other rooms, he asked the majority of the actors to say the incorrect answer and then be very certain about it. The classrooms, the rooms where most people chose the correct answer, there wasn't any problem with the innocent one. And in this room where there was only one or two actors who said the incorrect answers, then the innocent participants were still able to insist their correct choice. But when the number of actors that were certain about the wrong answer became the majority, the innocent participants started to question themselves. They started to show doubts, and then the percentage of them changing their answer from the correct one to incorrect one started to rise. So that just goes to show that it's in us as humans to conform to the majority, and that also works with works in complementary with the System 1 theory, because it seems to be very intuitive to give into your urge to conform, and you don't even bother to even get your System 2 too heavily involved. And that led to one social movement to another social movement, which can turn out to be total disasters, and a lot of people might actually legitimately sacrifice themselves in those movements. I'm not saying one is better, or like social movements are bad, or conforming to the majority voice, the biggest voice in the room, is bad. It could be good, because I mean, if it's for true good purpose, and there are enough people coming into solidarities with each other, coming into this unity with each other, then we can actually push the society to move forward. But just try to understand what we're getting ourselves into, what you are getting yourselves into before you start to conform with everyone else. Is it because you understand after your thorough analysis of like using your System 2 that this is for the good, or you're only agreeing with this, you're only conforming to this because of your urge to conform, and then you just give in to your System 1 of intuitive reactions? But either way, that's just my thoughts for today's video, and feel free to comment and then leave me any of your thoughts. I'm very excited I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. All right, thank you for listening. Hopefully I will see you in the next one soon. Bye, take care.